Welcome traders. It is Sunday, the 20th of June, 2021. I'm going to be running through the markets. I've got some good stuff. I see some good opportunities on currencies. There's definitely some good shorting opportunities on some big stocks. And also just an update on cryptocurrencies as well as some of the commodities. All right, so basically don't forget that there is the option to jump ahead to that particular section. I have included that in the description below. And so if you do want to skip ahead to that section, you can. It is listed, or you can just skip ahead. It's highlighted on the timeline. So let me kick off. Let's start off with the dollar index. So we've been waiting for, or at least I've been discussing the idea of the dollar perhaps strengthening off this $90 as perhaps part of a bigger picture range-bound behavior, and therefore the idea of it heading up to $99 or $100 is a possibility. Certainly this week, what I'm going to be looking for, so my sort of medium-term expectation is dollar strength, but I am looking for some corrections on the daily, looking for some buying opportunities to the upside. So it's a little bit overextended. If I look at the euro dollar, for example, it has moved to the downside. Yes, overall, in principle, I'm expecting it to continue down towards 1.17, but there may well be some good corrections which will provide swing traders or any trend-based traders opportunities to join those trends. So yes, I see, looking at this, we've got a lower high on the weekly on euro dollar. Let me just go back to that. Looking here on the monthly, we've got a lower high here. So that doesn't really bode well. Certainly if we break this low here, we then start an official monthly downtrend at that point and head down towards 1.16. But for now, any kind of pullbacks to retest 1.2 from the other side would be really nice as a potential entry point to the downside. Having a look at sterling. Sterling, same thing again, very much overextended, massive big bar here. So I'd expect price perhaps to continue down to 1.37, smaller candles, and then at some point a retracement or a correction, offering some shorting opportunities. And you can see here a very strong rejection. It's not even the first rejection actually in as many as 4 or 5 months. That's a nice bearish signal. So 1.35 is now on my list as a potential target, and looking for pullbacks this week to continue to see that going. You know, there could be a strong correction to the upside, but in principle, I'm still bearish on this. It's a very, very strong move and therefore supports that. And again here, look at how strong this break is on the weekly on Aussie dollar from all of this junk. This has basically been range bound for going all the way back to January. So for 6 months now, it's very keen to move. And actually looking again at it, on the monthly over here, seeing that failure to break through that level, and now it's finally started to break the lows. The market now more interested in testing new lows than it is in staying up there. Kiwi US dollar. Same thing again here, very close to breaking these previous lows, or have we actually done that? Yeah, I think we have by the hairs of our chinny chin chin. We've got a lower high here, this sort of swing behavior here, looking to break through 0.69. But again, pullbacks, good shorting opportunities. So I'm optimistic about this. For traders, I like the idea here that they'll actually be trading opportunities now in the coming week and some good money-making opportunities. Dollar yen doing its own thing. As per usual, dollar strength should be pushing it up, and actually we had 2 really strong dollar days on Thursday and Friday, and at the same time they just came out as weak on the side. So we've probably got the Bank of Japan doing their own playing their own game. Certainly some resistance up here at 110.75, but in principle I still expect this to continue up to 111.70 on the monthly. Dollar Swissy. There we go again, pullbacks into previous market structures in towards these lows would be, for me, really good buying opportunities. Okay, so those are really nice, especially if they do overlap. This is a little bit far, so if we get a really big correction or retracement, that would be the deepest, but somewhere around a 382, 50 fib, 618 would be very nice buying opportunities, and certainly not unwelcome. And then finishing off with dollar CAD, looking at this really big move, something we've been waiting for a couple of weeks. Fantastic money-making opportunities this previous week. Now heading up towards 1.25. It is overextended. Candles are really big, so a collection of smaller candles here would be potentially a shorting opportunity, but at the same time, it really is overdue, especially once it gets over that line of that 1.25. I start to become actually more bullish on it, and therefore there might be some good buying opportunities, but I have to take into account there will be some corrections either way. Moving on to the currencies of interest. Okay, so currencies of interest, Euro Aussie, love the fact it's starting to trend to the upside now, especially here we've got a weekly uptrend on that weekly chart there, looking good. High lows, high highs coming into recent highs over here, but certainly any pullbacks here again for intraday trading might have some good opportunities to the upside, and it will be the same kind of thing on Pound Aussie. I wanted to get past this 1.85 level of resistance plus this resistance patch over here. So in other words, if you look at it here on the monthly, I want to see it get breakthrough here and head up towards 1.9, and then I'll see some good opportunities there. It'll be similar with Pound QE as well as Euro QE. So Euro QE having broken out of this range bound box. Any kind of pullbacks here to test this level for support, good buying opportunities for me. And then seeing that continuing up to that 1.74 level, which is over here on the monthly, looking for it to do that. So overall, I think I'm interested and keen and excited about some opportunities this week. Pound Kiwi offering a similar type of thing. So really, I'll look at both setups. If they're both valid, when they occur, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll pick the better of the two if that's the case. And so any pullbacks here, looking for those buying opportunities. So that leaves me with essentially a series of yen charts which have been talking about how they've been overextended on the monthly. They finally started to kind of cave a bit and give way, and so looking for a monthly correction here, which might then provide, again, similar moves to the downside with retracements or corrections on the 4-hour or daily timeframes, looking for those shorting opportunities. So very similar Euro Yen, Aussie Yen, especially having broken through that 83 level. So there's lots of room for it to move down, and therefore I like them. They're quite appealing to me. CAD Yen as well. Still in an uptrend on the weekly, I might add, but certainly on that monthly now, having produced a swing high. I'm liking the moves down to these lower lows. So lots of room here for potential moves and therefore potential profit on those trades. Again, also similar here, Swiss yen just highlighting that it's going to be drawn down towards this 118 level. And so I'm going to find that quite appealing. Not as much room for profit, but certainly a valid type of setup. Again, any kind of corrections to the upside or retracements back up to test levels for resistance into these local or previous market structures, that looks really good for me. If it respects that, I'll be looking for shorting opportunities back and down. And the last one on my list is Aussie Swissy. Just a little bit choppy and messy over here, but overall that flow is very much to the downside, and it's very close to this 68.50 level, very close to that. So therefore, and within the larger uptrend or that retracement back down to the moving averages over here, for me, just saying there may well be a little bit of moves to the downside here, which will offer some very small intraday trading opportunities to the downside. And that's pretty much it for me in terms of currency markets of interest that I quite like. I think they're going to be offering some good money-making opportunities this week and possibly next week, and we'll deal with that then. Moving on to commodities, having a look at gold. Gold, really big correction. So actually I was talking about it potentially breaking through this 1900 level, my longer term view being nice and bullish. I'm now revising that. This is a strong, almost outside of a sort of bearish engulfing candle, starting to break the lows of last month. And so I'm revisiting this. Obviously this 1900 level is very significant. So in the immediate future, I'll be just kind of seeing if we do find some temporary support around these previous lows, and then seeing if we do head down towards 1680. But yes, at this point in time, there is now no clear trend necessarily, certainly not on the monthly, and therefore I'm going to play it as it lies throughout the week. Looking at silver to compare it to. A lot of this is influenced, by the way. It's not a coincidence that we've had so many big moves this week, the dollar being a big factor, a big cog in the machine, and impacting it that way. So looking to see here, silver not able to break through this band of resistance at 28, and having broken through now, so potentially going to head down to these next few lows, down towards the 25, 24, 50 level. That monthly really struggling a bit, and so it becomes really significant if we break these previous swing lows on the monthly. Then that whole kind of picture, longer term picture changes. For now, I'm just going to see how it is. I'm going to be a little bit cautious as we head a little bit lower. I'm not expecting it to necessarily keep dropping, but also the stronger that dollar, however that dollar is, that might still be a factor. Then the other one I wanted to bring in is palladium. So palladium within on that monthly overdue was really sort of overextended, has now retraced back into this previous level of resistance, which was a tough area for it to get through. And I want to see how it responds to it this week. So will there be a nice little bullish candle next week? Does it find some support here, or does it fall straight back through that? Okay, so it is technically in a nice strong uptrend on the monthly, has gone up to kind of all-time highs there, and is coming back into this kind of band of resistance. So I want to see if it does produce a bullish candle over the next week. Then the following week I might consider looking to go long on it. But if it falls right through this coming week, then potential, then that picture starts to look more and more bearish. All right, so now moving on to crude oils. Okay, starting off with West Texas. Look, it's still heading up towards 75. In principle, the weekly still looking good. Daily looking good, having pullback. Nice little bullish candle here. So actually this is a buy opportunity, and there's a potential target there of 75. The momentum indicators look nice and healthy. So there's no massive signs, or there's no kind of red flags that are showing up at this point in time. We could always do with a little bit of a correction on the weekly, but we are very close to that 75 level, and therefore the potential, especially with a nice little bullish candle set up here, if we break the high of this on Monday or Tuesday, to continue up towards that 75 level is certainly a possibility. I'm just looking at it here in the past, in the monthly, we've had some rejections there. And so, yeah, but we're so close to it, we might just see if that market does then continue up to that level. Then having a look at Brent, by comparison, Brent is now at 74. It's at a major level here. 74, 75, if I want to include that as a nice round number. This area being a historical level of resistance and quite a tough part for it to get through. Also having set up a bullish candle just underneath that. I'd like to see if we can push on through that. Very similar structurally to West Texas, and so I want to see how that goes. So I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt, but I am also aware that it is very close to resistance, and so we'll trade that cautiously if I feel that that setup is relatively valid. At some point, of course, now that we're heading into these key levels, I do expect a potential correction, at least a nice one on the daily or the weekly, just to let off some steam. Overall, the structure of it looks really nice and bullish. Then a couple of other commodities that I find are of interest, or just noting here, milk as well, very nice and bearish, really nice strong downtrend, good selling opportunities, breaking all these previous lows on the weekly, and then a nice downtrend on the monthly. Okay, so having broken through local levels recently, it's got a bit of room to run, and therefore shorting milk this week might be a nice opportunity there as well. Lean hogs, same thing again. Lean hogs kind of starting to break, close to breaking these previous lows, very much overextended on that monthly, and now having broken the previous lows of last month, now got some opportunity to head down certainly towards 100, and if not further down towards 80. So shorting opportunities on lean hogs, a nice potential opportunity there for anyone who's potentially a commodities futures trader. That could be interesting as well. Then same thing again, somebody just mentioning on lumber that we've had very much overextended, beautiful swing high. There's some good potential for some still more short potential, at least to the downside, down towards that 675 level, with again some daily retracements also acceptable, any kind of pullbacks there, potential shorting opportunities. And the last one on my list of commodities of interest to me would be sugar. So sugar here having really struggled at that 18 level, and now having started to break those lows, lower high, lower low. We've got a weekly downtrend. You can see here on the monthly really struggling with that, and therefore potentially hitting a little bit lower. It's not necessarily the best one I've seen, but still some shorting opportunities as the price action starts to break these previous lows. There could be some shorting opportunities there. Or at least of interest to me. Now, moving on to the global indices, starting with the Dow in the US. So again, struggling here. Now, I didn't do one last week. Really good trading last week, but I didn't do a weekly analysis video. I was just not in the mood for it. It takes me actually about 3 hours to do one. It takes a while, and so if you do me a kindness and just help me with the YouTube algorithm and give it a nice like and a subscribe, I would always be grateful for that. But yeah, so last week I was just going to talk about how the markets were potentially looking to take a bit of a correction with some concern there. But anyway, here it's you can see here just where we've got some double tops here and some strong resistance. We started to potentially come down into these lows here. So this week, that monthly almost forming a bit of a swing high. And so this is what I'm going to be looking for this week, is to see if it now is the beginning of a monthly correction, which means price will start to head down quite a bit lower. So there'll be some shorter term opportunities, and to the downside, some nice selling opportunities. I always trade these with just a much greater degree of caution because, of course, there's a lot of buy orders sitting at these levels of support, and therefore price can move very quickly and then bounce and recover very quickly. So I'm always very quick to make sure that I do take some profit, make sure my stop loss is in place, and then I manage that professionally. But yes, this week I'm looking to see if we have a deeper correction, or whether the weekly is likely to recover at these key levels. So again, any pullbacks, that we've got a similar type of look and feel that we see on the currency markets. So any kind of pullbacks, I'll see how that goes back into market structures. Again, NASDAQ was really the clue. We'll get to the NASDAQ in a moment, but that kind of similar, that failure on the weekly, it just wasn't looking that strong. Certainly not. We'll have a look on the NASDAQ in a moment, but certainly hinting at the fact that it's becoming quite exhausted. Here as well with the S&P, that monthly starting to produce smaller, a little bit of a hanging, similar to hanging man type shape, and a bit of an exhaustion, little bearish candle here, starting to definitely show that potential for a big move to the downside. So if this hasn't even started its journey, I could see this week where there is a possibility this could start to head lower, the Dow could continue heading lower, and so I could see prices starting to do that. So there'll be some shorting opportunities if that is the case in these markets, which is great. Again, one of the best things about being a trader obviously is that ability to short the markets, but have to do it. It's high risk, and therefore have to be very clever about doing it. But then I kind of look at the NASDAQ here. Yes, the NASDAQ has started to, well, it hasn't succeeded in closing outside of this range that I've highlighted over here. It's still produced an indecision candle, so it's going to be interesting to me if this week it also starts to break the low of that and cannot break through. And certainly here we've got that bearish divergence. So the question is that going to follow through? We're going to see a bigger correction. So I'll be keeping an eye on the NASDAQ, but it is struggling to get beyond that 14,200 level and certainly outside of that range. So I'll be watching it if that's the case. If that's going to head down, then I wouldn't be surprised to see other moves in the market. So then just finishing off with the Russell out of the US. This is now still within its range. I'm only laughing because those ranges tend to hold until they don't hold anymore. And you can see there's a lot of buyers here in the past on the weekly pushing price back up, pushing it back up. And let's just see if they're not here this week, price will close aggressively lower and solid, and then that will be an indication as to the following week the case. And you can see here on the monthly, much more sort of clearer. It stands out that price has just been obstinate and just unable to get past that point, and this looking relatively bearish at this point in time. So all of these just not showing much signs of recovery, and therefore this week I'm going to be prepared for the idea for the markets to hit a little bit low. Moving away from the US and going towards the UK, again, very similar, this being a weekly bearish candle. Not much of a new or high on that. Big bearish finish on Friday. Bearish candle over here on the monthly. Yes, certainly this is showing there is the possibility of a break and heading lower down. And then if that's the case, I'll be watching it coming down to those key levels. The DAX as well in Germany having recovered or tested off this level, but almost immediately now broken back below it. Okay, so that story that it's telling here again, was able to find support. There were buyers that were able to hold it above last week or the week before, not anymore. Okay, again here on the weekly, starting to head a little bit lower, weekly bearish candle, and that monthly being a little bit of a bearish rejection candle. Euro stocks, same thing. This looks really nice and healthy on the weekly. It's like a long move up and a nice little correction. That's on the daily, and the weekly looking a little bit normal as well, almost as though it wants to have a weekly correction. And the monthly looking, overall, this particular instrument is looking stronger than all of the ones I've previously looked at. But that doesn't mean that it won't necessarily follow the rest of the herd if they do. So just caution on that one. The Nikkei has kind of been producing a series of lower highs for a while. You can see certainly on the monthly here, just strong rejections and treading water. So that's kind of strong in this area, but just not enough to keep going beyond that. So we'll see. And there's a lot of small candles here, which can often precede a big move. And therefore, it is possible, again, that there could be some really big drops if that's going to be the case. So I'm going to exercise some definite caution there. There we go. I wanted to finish up on the Australian index. Broken through, beautiful monthly candle, really nice and strong. Weekly looks good as well, and here a little pullback to a little bit of a bullish candle, but that 7,400 level showing some strong resistance over there. So overall, very healthy in isolation, but if the US markets are going to have a correction, it's going to be difficult for this not to be impacted by that. But I have to say the last two, Nikkei and the ASX, looking very good. So now to continue and having a look at stocks that I find of interest. Now, the majority of them look like they're going to have quite a big correction. There's a couple that look like they're holding strong and therefore might be good buying opportunities for me at any rate. And so I'll just take you through them and my thoughts on it. So starting off here with American Express, generally a massive fan of it. Fantastic, nice little, if they produce a nice little bullish candle here over the next week or the week after, looking good. But looking at the monthly, take into account that we now have this red bearish monthly candle forming. This could signal a monthly swing high and therefore a correction down towards 140, potentially down into the structure towards 120. So American Express potentially about to experience a monthly retracement or correction. ARC Innovation. Higher up on my list, I love the fact there's a little bit of a bullish inside candle here, some nice little buyers above here. It's been a great performer. It is technically in a downtrend on the weekly, but this might well represent a potential buying opportunity. So this is something I do find of interest, and that is looking good to me. So I'm actually I'm somewhat, at this point in time, bullish actually on ARC Innovation. And so that looks pretty good. Berkshire Hathaway. Okay, so Berkshire Hathaway is signaling to me failure to get through that 291.60 level, and certainly looks like it wants to have a bit of a correction down towards 250, or perfectly acceptable for her down towards 225. Okay, so that to me looks like that's preparing for a bit of a correction, and so just thought I would mention that one. BP. Okay, so BP, a couple of these petrol companies as well, oil companies looking as though they're about to experience a little bit of a winter. So you could just see here kind of stalling towards on the top of the last 5 or 6 months, and this latest month looking nice and bearish. That weekly candle, a bit of a drop, and so we started to come down back towards these old lows here. Looking a little bit flat on the momentum indicators, or even a little bit on the bearish side. If this did have a bit of a correction to the downside, wouldn't surprise me at all. I'll come back to this Exxon as well. I want to have a look at that, but let's have a look at Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola also struggling a bit with that 55 level and potentially just having broken, hasn't actually broken the previous high up here, hasn't even broken the most recent high. It's actually already looking like it wants to have a bit of a correction. And so I wouldn't be completely shocked if this did decide to come down towards 50 and have a look at that. Exxon. Okay, so Exxon, same thing, but almost more pronounced. These strong rejections up here, struggling a little bit with that. Just not really clear. Technically does not look like it has enough energy to keep going. So at some point, a correction down towards 50 again would make a lot of sense to me. Right, General Motors, same thing. General Motors really struggling up here. Bearish candle rejection at the moment. Really struggling a little bit here, almost some bearish divergence on that weekly. I'm going to see if this starts to break through these lows. My expectation is to see this head down towards 50 as well. It might be the week after next, but I'm just highlighting these are certainly on my watch list for those shorting opportunities. JP Morgan, bearish engulfing candle. At this point, that's usually quite a strong signal that it wants to head down, at least either into the previous highs, which put it at 133, give or take, or potentially down towards 120 or a little bit further. So that looks like that's almost at the start of a bit of a journey south. Morgan Stanley also preparing very much for, it looks like a correction down, even potentially as far as 60 or a little bit further. What I want to see this weekly, it looks fantastic, and therefore if there's a weekly bullish candle, that's pretty good. But we are heading in towards the end of the month, and so even a bullish finish here, it would have to recover all the way back up past 96 in order for this candle to not be red anymore, to finish up quite bullish. That is a possibility. Of course it's a possibility. But if it fails to do that, especially if it comes down towards these lows, then we're starting to look as though we're on for a bigger correction. Nvidia graphics cards looking really nice and healthy. Man, had a beautiful consolidation here. It's broken higher. So all of this on a monthly basis looking to me pretty good. A little bearish rejection candle here on the daily, so potentially a bit of a weekly correction. That is a possibility, but overall, similar to Kathy Wood's ARC Innovation, I'm more bullish on this than bearish. PayPal as well. PayPal looking pretty good. So actually here, although it had a bit of a rejection and a kind of a bit of indecision, it's consolidated. Last one's candle looking nice and bullish. It's managed to break above this consolidation patch over here. Not looking that bad. So overall, kind of more of a fan of PayPal, but that 300 level might well be a bit of a key ceiling for it. So I'll keep an eye on that. Royal Mail out of the UK. So this one also very much overextended on the monthly, hitting a nice round number, 600. Bearish, small bearish candle, showing some struggle there at that 600 level there. And so certainly a deeper retracement for me, perhaps back down to 530. And again, if we get a bigger correction in the US, I think we'll see a bigger correction here as well. I think it'll pull everything down. Then on to Spider Series Trust. I actually quite like this one. Again, I'm more bullish on this one than bearish. I like the fact that it's found some really strong support at this point in time, and a nice little bullish indecision candle sitting in here, almost like a bit of a doji spinning top, I beg your pardon, sitting within this inside candle. So overall, I quite like the look of this. I want to see how it finishes by the end of the month, but that might, if it does finish this way, that might be potentially a nice opportunity for me to explore a little bit further, and then finishing on Vanguard. So finishing on Vanguard's S&P 500 ETF, and this one had a good run, bit of a hanging man there, and now looking a little bit bearish, and so therefore some bearish. This one actually a little bit flat, not that bearish, not the divergence, not that bad, but keeping an eye on this. It did have its breakout at that point. It's now starting to look a little bit weak, and a pullback down towards 350, perfectly acceptable. And I think that's more likely given the fact that the weekly really wasn't able to create a new high. So therefore, I'm thinking there's more of a possibility of a deeper correction. So a couple of these showing some good buying opportunities. If there is a larger correction within the rest, and the ones that are on my kind of buy watch list are still managed to finish strong, then I'm even more encouraged when I have a look at those. Okay, so now moving on to the have a look at some of the treasuries. Let's have a look at this. We've got some kind of price pulling back up, but that's not looking really that bullish. Again, kind of stalling, not a lot of love for it as well. This is the 10-year T-note starting to climb to the upside, but not really finding a lot of love there. So I'm only bringing this up just to talk about kind of that relationship between, bonds can often be seen as a little bit of a safe haven tool during times where markets get strong corrections, and not really seeing a big move towards that at this point in time. Let's have a look at the Euro bubble. That's not going anywhere at all. So they're just not being considered really that much. There's not much more than the other transactions happening. So here again, largely just sideways motion. Okay, a little bit of a swing low there, so possibility it wants to climb. It'll be interesting to see if we do get a bit of a correction in the market this coming week, if we get a bit of a boost on these, just always out of curiosity. There we go. So now moving on to cryptos. Okay, so one of the things I was looking at here was looking at Bitcoin potentially having found its feet again, having it obviously a well-deserved break and a bit of a correction. Currently, it looks like it's not quite there yet. If I look at it on the daily, it's come down actually since my last video, looking to almost test 30,000 again. It's still considering it. It's still stuck within this range. So the problem with this is it's not really as an investment. Yeah, it's potentially, hypothetically, this is not financial advice, by the way. This is just me thinking aloud to myself, discourse, just saying, it's at a discount. It's worthwhile. If I've got the money, I can put it aside. It's not I'm patient, and it's a 2 to 5 year plan. Yeah, potentially the price is looking nice and appealing here. As a trader, it's incredibly dangerous at the moment because it actually hasn't picked where it's going to go. It's fully range bound, therefore could bounce this week and climb back up. And so what I'm looking for me will be the stronger signs is a bullish monthly candle. That's what I need to see, or a strong rejection of the lows. I'm not seeing that at this point in time. So for me, this is just a flat kind of stay away and be cautious. Ethereum breaking right down towards that 2000 level. Strong downtrend on the daily, a lower high on that weekly. That monthly looks like a good correction down here, down towards 1400. And therefore, the possibility of a deeper correction on cryptos is still on the table for me. Cardano, just very quickly going through that, actually here still producing an inside bearish candle, and therefore correction much lower is still on the table. Dogecoin, such a solid rejection there. Again, possibility here of a correction, a deeper correction still on the table, finishing off with kind of Neo and Ripple. Neo also bearish all the way down. In fact, this one has had the healthiest correction so far. There's not much further for it to go. It's back into the kind of point of this sort of equilibrium zone where it's had a bit of a correction. This is kind of closer to where its true value is. And so actually Neo to me is the closest towards kind of almost completing its correction. The rest, quite a few of the rest look like they've got a long way to go, finishing off with Ripple. Ripple also now having come back into these previous highs, therefore might well find some support here. So interesting, there's a couple of them that look like they might be finished and done with their big corrections, which they needed to have, and a couple that look like they've got some way to go. So it's going to be interesting to me because I don't think that it'll be the case where half have a big correction still to go and the rest don't. I think they tend to act as a herd, and so therefore it might just be safe to split it in the middle, saying we see a bit of a deeper correction across the board, but not much further. So that's definitely a possibility there. So there we go, ladies and gents. This is my entire watch list across all the different markets this week. I do think there are going to be some good money-making opportunities this week. Managed to get our way through most of the major news announcements. There are some corrections or retracements, certainly on a 4-hourly basis or daily, but I do think there'll be some good opportunities across different markets, depending on which are your favorites. And I hope you've enjoyed this. And again, I always appreciate it if you can help me with the YouTube algorithm and just give it a like and a subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.